For my 30th birthday, my cruel in-laws gave me an empty suitcase. "You're leaving tonight," my mother-in-law said. "Nathan agrees, it's for the best." I was heartbroken, but I just smiled and thanked them. My own secret flight was already booked. I was leaving all right, but they had no idea who was waiting for me. Before we get into it, I'd love to know, what city are you watching from today? And be sure to subscribe for our daily stories. Okay, let's head to that beautiful golden cage. Living in my in-laws' house was like being a beautiful, perfectly cared for and prized bird in a very large, very golden, and very inescapable cage. When my husband, Nathan, and I had first moved in with his parents, Victor and Sylvia, 2 years ago, it had been sold to me as a sensible short-term solution. Just for a year, Nathan had promised, just until we save up enough for a down payment on our own place. 2 years later, we were still here. And the walls of our cage, it seemed, were only getting smaller. My father-in-law, Victor, was a man who ruled his world with his wallet. He was the silent, powerful patriarch who had built a small fortune in real estate, and he saw everything and everyone as an asset to be managed. My mother-in-law, Sylvia, was the more active jailer. Her weapon of choice was a sweet, smiling, and insidious form of caring. She would reorganize my closet while I was out, leaving behind a faint, proprietary scent of her perfume on my clothes. She would help with the cooking by subtly criticizing every ingredient I chose. But the worst part, the part that was a slow, creeping poison in my own heart, was what their control was doing to my husband. The passionate, defiant, and wonderful man I had married was slowly and systematically being replaced by a quiet, compliant, and distant stranger. He was becoming his father's son. The fight, the one that would become the final breaking point for me, was a small and humiliating one. I had been offered a promotion at my job, a real career-making opportunity. I was ecstatic, but the new position required a small amount of travel. When I told my in-laws the news over dinner, my mother-in-law had just smiled her tight, polite smile. "Well, that's lovely, dear," she had said, "but of course, you won't be accepting it. Nathan needs you here." I had looked at my husband, my partner, my ally, expecting him to defend me, but he did not. He just stared down at his plate. "She's right, Sasha," he had mumbled, his voice a low, defeated thing. "It's not a good time. The family, my parents, they need us here." That night, after he had fallen asleep, I lay awake in the silent, opulent guest room that was supposed to be our bedroom, and I looked at the man beside me. And for the first time, I felt a profound and terrifying sense of being completely and utterly alone. His family had not just taken over our home, they had taken over our marriage, and they had won. It was in that moment, in the quiet moonlit darkness of that beautiful, terrible house, that I began to plan my own escape. I started saving money, small, secret amounts, in a new bank account my in-laws did not know about. I began to research cities, jobs, and small, one-bedroom apartments 1,000 miles away from here. And 3 weeks ago, I had done it. I had bought a single, one-way, and non-refundable plane ticket. The departure date was my 30th birthday. It was a deadline, a promise I was making to my own long-forgotten self. I still loved my husband. A part of me, a foolish, hopeful part, still believed that the man I had married was still in there, somewhere, underneath the weight of his parents' expectations. But as I watched him, day by day, become a quieter, more distant, and more compliant version of himself, I knew I could not wait for him to save me anymore. It was time. I had finally and truly accepted to start planning how to save myself. The weeks leading up to my 30th birthday were a masterclass in the art of the silent scream. On the outside, I was the perfect, compliant daughter-in-law, a quiet, smiling ghost in their grand and increasingly oppressive home. But on the inside, I was a different person. I had a secret, a beautiful, brilliant, and liberating secret. My one-way ticket, a countdown clock to my own freedom. That secret was the only thing that got me through. It was my armor against my mother-in-law, Sylvia's, escalating campaign of psychological warfare. She seemed to sense a shift in me, a new, quiet strength she couldn't quite put her finger on, and it infuriated her. Her caring became more and more invasive. One afternoon, I came back to our room to find her there with 2 workmen, directing them as they repainted the walls from a soft, warm cream to a cold and institutional gray. "It was so drab in here, dear," she had said, a triumphant smile on her face. "I thought it needed a more sophisticated touch." I had confronted my husband, Nathan, about it that night, my voice a low, trembling whisper of rage. "She repainted our bedroom, Nathan, our private space, without even asking." He wouldn't meet my eyes. He just sighed, a deep, weary sound of a man who has already surrendered. "Sasha, please," he had mumbled, "don't make a scene. It's her house. She was just trying to be nice. It's just a color. It's not worth fighting over." The silent sacrifice of my own voice, of my own right to be angry, was a daily bitter pill I had to swallow. My father-in-law, Victor, joined the assault as well. He called a formal family meeting in his study, and with the air of a benevolent king bestowing a great gift, he announced that he was putting me and Nathan on a strict new budget. He took away our joint credit card and gave us a weekly allowance in cash like 2 disobedient children. "It's to help you save," he had said, a cold, hard glint in his eye. "To teach you financial responsibility." I had looked at Nathan, expecting, praying for a flicker of outrage, of defiance, but there was nothing. He had just nodded. "Thank you, Dad," he had said. "We appreciate your guidance." I felt my heart break all over again. The man I had married, the passionate, defiant man who had once promised me a life of adventure, was gone. In his place was this quiet, compliant, and utterly defeated stranger. He was no longer my partner. He was their son, and I was just a guest in their house, a temporary problem they were managing. My secret escape plan, which had once felt like a sad necessity, now felt like an urgent, life-saving mission. I spent my nights on my laptop, not looking for a life for us anymore, but for a life for me. I found a small, sunlit apartment in a city 1,000 miles away. I had a job interview lined up via Zoom. I quietly and systematically began to sell off the last few pieces of my old pre-marriage life online. A piece of jewelry from my grandmother, a collection of first edition books, and I had the money funneled into my secret bank account. My 30th birthday, the day of my flight, arrived on a cold, gray Saturday. I woke up that morning, my heart a frantic, fluttering bird in my chest, a mixture of a profound, gut-wrenching terror and a brilliant, dazzling hope. I just had to get through this one last and final day. I had my small, pre-packed suitcase hidden in the back of my closet. My plan was to feign a headache after lunch, to retreat to my room for a nap, and then to slip out of the house and take a taxi to the airport while they were all distracted. But they, of course, had a plan of their own. As I was finishing my morning coffee, my mother-in-law, Sylvia, walked into the kitchen, a cheerful and unsettling smile on her face. "Sasha, dear," she trilled, her voice a sweet, silken purr that always set my teeth on edge. "Happy birthday. Your father-in-law and I have a special surprise for you. We're all waiting for you in the living room." I plastered a fake, polite smile on my own face and followed her out of the room. A surprise. I could only imagine what fresh, new, and creative hell they had concocted for me. I just had to get through this one last and final performance, and then I would be free. I walked into the living room, my heart a slow, heavy drum of dread. My in-laws, Victor and Sylvia, were sitting on the expensive white silk sofa, their faces arranged in a mask of solemn parental concern that I knew, from 2 long years of experience, was the prelude to an execution. My husband, Nathan, was standing by the large bay window, his back to me, looking out at the perfectly manicured and lifeless garden. He did not turn when I entered. And in the center of the room, a stark, black, and ominous object on the pristine white carpet, was a brand new and completely empty suitcase. "Sasha, dear," my mother-in-law, Sylvia, began, her voice a sweet, silken purr that always set my teeth on edge. "Happy birthday! Your father-in-law and I have a special surprise for you. We're all waiting for you in the living room." I stared at the suitcase, my mind a cold, blank slate. My father-in-law, Victor, then delivered the killing blow. He did not speak with emotion. He spoke with the cool, calm, and deeply satisfied tone of a businessman closing a hostile takeover. "We have had a long talk with Nathan," he said, his voice a low, final judgment, "and we have all, as a family, come to an agreement. This arrangement, your marriage to our son, it is not working out. It is for the best for everyone that you leave." I looked at the back of my husband's head, at his silent, unmoving form by the window. He said nothing. He did not turn. His silence was his consent. My mother-in-law then delivered the final, cruel command. "You're leaving tonight, Sasha," she said, a small, triumphant smile on her face. "We've taken the liberty of booking you a one-way flight to your mother's. It leaves at 10 p.m. Nathan," she said, still without looking at her own son, "agrees. He thinks you will be happier on your own. He will be staying here, with us, where he belongs." My heart, which I had thought could not break any further, seemed to shatter into 1,000 tiny, irreparable pieces. He had not just let them win. He had joined their side. And it was in that moment of absolute and complete and utter heartbreak that a strange and wonderful thing happened. The fear, the sadness, the desperate need for his approval, it all just vanished. And in its place was a profound and beautifully liberating sense of calm. The fight was over. I had lost, and I was finally and truly free. I did not cry. I did not scream. I did the one thing they did not, in a million years, expect me to do. I looked at the empty suitcase, the symbol of my own exile, and I smiled. A slow, genuine, and deeply satisfied smile. "Thank you," I said, my voice as calm and as clear as a bell. "This is perfect. It is, in fact, exactly what I needed. You've actually saved me a trip to the store." They just stared at me, their own smug, victorious smiles, now faltering, replaced by a look of confused and unsettled surprise. This was not the reaction they had been expecting. They had been expecting tears. They had been expecting a fight. They had not been expecting gratitude. You see, I continued, my own voice now full of a strange and unfamiliar and wonderfully light-hearted energy. My own flight was already booked, for tonight, as it happens, at 10 p.m., so this, I gestured to the suitcase, is really a very thoughtful and very practical birthday present. I looked at my husband's silent, unmoving back. "It seems," I said, a small, sad laugh escaping my lips, "that great minds really do think alike." My in-laws just stared at me, their faces a mask of confused and now slightly unnerved victory. They had won. They had successfully and finally broken up our marriage and gotten rid of the daughter-in-law they had so despised. They had no idea that the silent, defeated man who was still standing by the window was not their greatest and most loyal ally. He was my secret, my brilliant, and my most wonderful co-conspirator. And he was just, as we had planned, waiting for his cue. "That's a very brave face you're putting on, dear," she said, her voice a sweet, condescending purr. "But we know you're heartbroken, and this is truly for the best. Nathan will be so much happier now, free from all the complications." The complication, of course, was me. I just smiled my quiet, steady smile. I looked at the back of my husband, Nathan's head, his silent, unmoving form still framed by the large bay window, and I gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod, a signal that only he would understand. And at that exact moment, as if on cue, the sound of a car horn, a short, polite, and final honk, echoed from the driveway. Our taxi had arrived, and Nathan, finally, after a long and performative silence, turned from the window. He was not the sad, defeated, and compliant son they had been speaking to for the last few months. His face was a mask of a cold, quiet, and satisfying determination. He did not look at them. He looked directly at me. "Are you ready, my love?" he asked, his voice a clear, strong instrument that was a world away from the mumbled, defeated tones his parents were so used to hearing from him. And then he walked. He walked past his stunned, silent parents who were now staring at him as if he had just sprouted a second head. He did not walk to me. He walked to the grand, sweeping staircase in the foyer. And he returned a moment later, not with one suitcase, but with two. Two large and very, very full suitcases, his own. He walked back into the living room and placed his bags beside my new, empty one. He then finally turned to face his parents. The look of pure, uncomprehending shock on their faces was a thing of absolute and glorious beauty. "Thank you, Mother, Father," he began, his voice devoid of all warmth, all emotion, "for making this so much easier than I ever thought it would be. I've been struggling for weeks, trying to figure out the right way to tell you that Sasha and I were leaving tonight. You've really saved me the trouble of a long and very awkward conversation." My mother-in-law, Sylvia, just stared, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. But you agreed, Nathan," she finally stammered. "We had a long talk. You said you were unhappy." "Oh, I was unhappy," Nathan said with a short, bitter, and humorless laugh. "I have been profoundly and unhappy for the last 2 years, ever since I made the terrible and deeply cowardly mistake of moving my wife back into this mausoleum." He looked around the perfect and lifeless room. "I was unhappy because I was watching the woman I love, the strong, brilliant, and wonderful woman I married, be slowly and systematically suffocated by the two of you." He then looked at me, and his eyes were full of a deep and apologetic love. "And I was unhappy with myself," he said, his voice now a quiet, raw whisper, "for being too weak, too afraid to stand up to you, for letting my own wife believe that I was choosing you over her." He turned back to his parents. "So yes, we had long talks where I agreed with you, talks where I nodded and I played the part of the good, obedient son. I was not agreeing with you. I was buying time. I was buying time while I finalized my job transfer to the London office. I was buying time while I secured our new apartment. And I was buying time," he said, picking up our plane tickets from the mantelpiece, "while I waited for these to arrive." He walked over to me and took my hand. "Ready to go?" he asked again, his voice now a gentle, loving thing. "Yes, I whispered. We walked out of that house, together, hand in hand, leaving my in-laws, my former jailers, standing, frozen, in the middle of their perfect, silent, and now very, very empty living room. The single, empty suitcase, a perfect, beautiful, and ironic monument to their own epic and self-inflicted failure. They had not just tried to kick out their daughter-in-law, their own cruelty, their own arrogance, their own need to control had been the very thing that had orchestrated their own son's perfect and permanent escape. They had not just lost a daughter-in-law they despised. They had just, in a single, beautiful and self-made moment of karmic justice, lost their son, completely and forever. I sat in the back of the taxi, the city lights a blurry, celebratory streak of color through the window. My husband, my beautiful, brilliant, and underestimated husband, Nathan, held my hand, his grip a warm, steady, and grounding presence in the whirlwind of my own emotions. The sound of the front door of his parents' house closing behind us had been the most satisfying sound I have ever heard. We were silent for a long time, the quiet hum of the taxi's engine the only sound. And then I turned to him. "I thought I had lost you," I whispered, the words a raw and honest admission of the fear I had been living with for 2 long years. "I really believed you had chosen them over me." He turned to face me, and his eyes were full of a deep and apologetic love. "Sasha," he began, his own voice a low, serious thing. "Letting you believe that, letting you feel that pain was the hardest and most cruel thing I have ever had to do, and I will spend the rest of our lives making it up to you." He then told me everything. He explained his long, quiet, and strategic war. He had realized 2 years ago that a direct confrontation with his parents was a battle he could never win. They were too powerful, too controlling, and their emotional hold on him was too deep. Fighting them in that house was like trying to win a chess game where they owned the board and wrote all the rules. The only way to win, he concluded, a sad, wise smile on his face, was to refuse to play. So he had formulated a plan, a long, patient, secret plan of escape. He had pretended to agree with them. He had endured their lectures. He had played the part of the obedient son, all while he was secretly and methodically untangling their lives from his. He had opened a new private bank account. He had arranged for his job transfer to the company's London office. He had secured a beautiful, small apartment for us in a city an ocean away. "I had to let them think they were winning," he whispered, his eyes full of the memory of the pain it had cost him. "I had to let them think they were pulling me away from you. It was the only way they would lower their guard, the only way I could get our lives and our future out from under their control without them trying to sabotage it." He squeezed my hand. "But watching them hurt you, day after day, and having to stay silent, Sasha, it almost killed me." The gift of the empty suitcase, their final, cruel act, had not been a surprise to him. It had been the final, perfect, and deeply ironic move he had been waiting for. It was the checkmate he had been planning all along. The rest of the story is a quiet and beautiful one. We flew to London that night, and we did not look back. My in-laws, Victor and Sylvia, tried, of course. There were a few frantic and increasingly pathetic voicemails. There were threatening letters from their lawyers. But their power, which had seemed so absolute in the small, closed world of their grand house, was a weak, pathetic thing from 5,000 miles away. We did not engage. We just began to live. It has been a year now. I am sitting on the small, charming balcony of our London apartment, a cup of tea in my hand. It is not a mansion, but it is ours. Below me, the city is a vibrant, bustling, and beautiful symphony of a life I had never thought possible. My own life is full again. I have a new job at a small, independent art gallery, a job I love, and I talk to my old friends Chloe and Maya on the phone every single week. My husband, the man I have so joyfully and so completely rediscovered, is standing in the doorway, a happy, easy smile on his face. He is no longer the quiet, defeated man from that old, sad house. He is the man I first fell in love with, passionate and funny and free. I had thought, in my darkest moments, that my love story was a tragedy. But I was wrong. It was a spy thriller. My husband was not a casualty of his family's war. He was a secret agent, a brilliant, patient, loving double agent working a long and dangerous deep cover operation. His mission? To rescue the woman he loved. And his victory was not in a single explosive confrontation. It was in a quiet and beautifully executed escape. An escape into a new and better life. Together. An absolutely incredible story of a husband's secret plan and a perfect, long-game revenge. What a satisfying and brilliant twist. What do you think of Nathan's decision to play along with his parents to plan the escape? Let us know in the comments below. If you were cheering for this couple's ultimate victory, please show your support by hitting that like button, and be sure to subscribe for more incredible stories of karma and justice. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.